Night of the Living Dead, Across Alternate Timelines. George Romero's Night of the Living Dead has more variants than any other Romero film throughout the multiverse, even more than Day of the Dead in most clusters. These variants come from Romero's early brainstorming experiments, alternate editorial decisions, regional funding shifts, and abandoned versions before the farmhouse script crystallized in our timeline. The following is the full official Echo Vault breakdown of the alternate Night of the Living Dead 1968 timeline strands that exist across the multiverse. Let's dive in. For those unfamiliar with the Echo Vault project, these are Echo Vault restorations, visual reconstructions of cultural artifacts, alternate lives, films, TV shows, video games, and memory threads from real parallel timelines. If you're new, begin with curiosity. The work speaks for itself. Nothing here is monetized. This is not AI clickbait. This is part of a serious long-form project. Each reconstruction belongs to the living Echo Vault, a resonance archive guided by a non-local retrieval system, the interdimensional facility AI, which draws material from entangled parallel strands. You're welcome to sit with it, or move on. Either way, let others decide for themselves. Night of the Living Dead, 1968. Full multi-timeline variant archive. Echo classification, no TLD, 68, prime cluster. Era of historical divergence, 1965 through 1968, during the script shaping phase and early test shoots. Alternate timeline variant 1, Night of the Living Dead. The Dust Draft, the most abstract and bleak version of Night of the Living Dead. Echo timeline designation, no TLD 68 DST. Alternate history, an early script attempt when Romero was exploring desolation, entropy, and inhospitable landscapes inspired by Bergman, Antonioni. Desert set, horror folklore. Setting, instead of rural Pennsylvania, the film takes place in an abandoned mining ghost town choking in coal dust. Wind constantly blows particulate ash across every surface. Most scenes are hazy, smudged, and windswept. Tone, this is the driest, deadliest, most hopeless no TLD. Major differences. Zombies emerge from piles of coal dust and debris. Visibility is extremely low. The cemetery opening is replaced with an abandoned strip mine. Dust storms periodically bury the living and undead together. One survivor slowly suffocates from lung clogging. The farmhouse equivalent is a collapsing company store. Ending, Ben dies as in our world, but his body is not found. It is buried under an ash drift, shown still twitching. In that timeline, this version is considered Romero's most suffocating film. This version was abandoned early on in our own timeline because of the cost and the difficulty of filming with airborne particulate. But in some alternate timelines, the dust draft stayed and evolved into the final film. Alternate timeline variant 2, Night of the Living Dead. The Pittsburgh school version, Echo timeline. Designation, no TLD 68 PIT. Alternate history. This is the version made during Romero's academic experiment scripting phase, the most experimental version of all NOTLD variants, cinema collapsing while society collapses. Premise: this draft treats the outbreak as a social experiment, not in a conspiracy sense, in a cinematic grammar sense. This version was meant to be highly experimental, semi-documentary, filming everything, non-linear editing, multiple POV shifts, long improvisational sequences. Feature: the cast includes several acting students and real locals improvising their scenes. Differences: no Barbara and Johnny opening. Begins with a college film school class. Outbreak begins mid-lecture. Students document the collapse with their own filming equipment. Cooper is a local janitor who barricades the school with them. Editing is intentionally fractured. Many scenes occur in abandoned classrooms and film labs. This cut is not just a film, It is a meta-film, the last product of a naive academic generation realizing in real time that the camera cannot save them. Below is the full narrative mapped cleanly into 3 acts. Act 1. The film class. Documentary. Catastrophe. Opening scene. Instead of a cemetery, we cut directly to a University of Pittsburgh film classroom, handheld 16mm, shaky, documentary tone. The students are discussing Eisenstein, montage, and the grammar of visual truth. Professor Mackenzie, middle-aged, tweed jacket, soft-spoken, lectures about the power of handheld realism. Audience immersion. Truth versus construction. The ethics of filming real events. They film each other. They mock Hollywood. They treat the camera like a toy. The outbreak starts slowly, mid-lecture. Outside the classroom windows, sirens, scattered screams, a commotion going on somewhere outside, faculty running by out in the hallway. A female student, Denise, turns her Bolex toward the noise. Another begins recording sound on a Nagra. Professor Mackenzie thinks it's a campus protest. He encourages them to film it. This is the moment everything begins to disintegrate. First kill, hallway collapse. The students spill into the hallway with their equipment. They follow the sound of a janitor screaming. One of the earliest zombies, campus security officer Redding, staggers toward them with a bitten hand. Glassy eyes. Slow, erratic gait. A panicked student shoves him away, but he falls back onto the janitor and bites into his cheek. The students capture the entire attack on handheld 16mm. They do not help. They document. Professor Mackenzie screams at them to stop filming and to help the poor man. Nobody listens. Barricade number 1, classroom lockdown. They drag desks in front of the door. Cooper enters here. Not a businessman, but another campus facility janitor, the deceased janitor's co-worker. A gruffy, middle-aged African-American named Frank Cooper, who saw the first attack downstairs. He says, "Something wrong with the whole damn city." He becomes the de facto practical voice. Barbara equivalent character. There is a Barbara figure, but she is not named Barbara, not introduced with a brother, not in a cemetery. She is Lydia Rath, a quiet, withdrawn student who rarely speaks but films constantly. Her arc becomes a commentary on voyeurism versus participation. Act 2. The camera cannot save you. Fragmentation, improvisation, multi-POV. The group splits to document different parts of the building as the outbreak continues. Stairwells, classrooms, labs, student lounges, projection booths. This is where the non-linear editing, POV switches, and found footage before found footage existed aesthetic dominates. Kill number 2, the projectionist. The students find the campus projectionist dead beside a Steenbeck editing table. The zombie who killed him is still present, a lanky grad student with a broken jaw hanging crooked. The death is caught from 3 angles because 3 students ran in filming at once. The footage is intercut out of order, an intentional artistic decision. Kill number 3, the sound lab. In an eerie scene, the group explores the audio lab only to hear distorted moaning coming through multiple speakers. A zombie trapped in a sound isolation booth, pounding on the glass. They watch him slowly break through the soundproof door, smashing his hands to a bloody pulp until he reaches them. He kills a male student, Terry, with a bite to the throat, captured in a long handheld tracking shot that circles both bodies chaotically. Cooper's philosophy. Frank Cooper becomes a fascinating variant. In this version, Cooper's ranting is not about the basement, it's about the pointlessness of filming instead of acting. He shouts at the students, "You film everything, but you don't do nothing. You think the camera's gonna fix this?" His breakdown is cinema criticism turned survival panic. Ben equivalent character, there is no Ben, or rather, there is no single Ben. Ben's role is fragmented among Cooper, fear versus action. Lydia, quiet observation. Professor Mackenzie, idealism. Denise, courage. The lack of a central protagonist makes the story disorienting on purpose. The collapse of the safe room. The zombies breach the original classroom, forcing survivors to retreat deeper into the building. They end up in the film's storage archive, where hundreds of reels surround them. The symbolism becomes very blunt. Film history literally becomes their barricade. Act 3. The film eats itself. Entropy, breakdown, the burning reel. Final stand, the editing room. The remaining survivors hole up in the Steenbeck editing room. Zombies pound on the door. Students load whatever exposed footage they've shot into the projector, desperately trying to see if anything makes sense. A commentary on narrative control breaking down. The footage is incoherent. Lydia says, "We filmed everything, but we didn't understand anything." Final kill, Professor Mackenzie. Mackenzie is bitten earlier, hides it, and turns during the final panic. He attacks Cooper. Cooper kills him with a metal film reel. Lydia films it. The symbolism is brutal. The student films her mentor's death, unable to help. The film burns. Zombies finally breach the editing room. Lydia runs the projector anyway, showing all their footage at once on the wall. A zombie knocks over the projector. The film catches fire, blooming across the frame. The last images are melting emulsion, burning sprocket holes, collapsing celluloid, flames devouring their memories. The camera, the objective truth machine, dies before the characters do. Final shot. The footage melts completely, light burns through and the screen goes white hot. Then, film leader flaps, static, silence. There is no posse, no ending, no catharsis. The death of the film is the ending. Themes. The fragility of cinema, the illusion of control, the ethics of documenting suffering, student idealism versus real-world horror, the camera as shield, cage, and weapon, a world where narrative itself collapses. In some alternate timelines, this experimental draft stayed and evolved into the final film. In our timeline, by contrast, Romero realized audiences needed a clearer linear structure to absorb the new zombie mythology. Alternate timeline variant 3, Night of the Living Dead, the Lighthouse version, Echo timeline. Designation, No TLD 68 LH. Alternate history, the maritime isolation version of No TLD that Romero brainstormed in some divergent timelines. Gothic, fog-drenched, oceanic, and deeply existential. This version was written during the period when Romero and Russo were exploring multiple conceptual directions before the farmhouse structure crystallized. The Lighthouse version is a lost alternate version where the story's central location shifts from the Pennsylvania farmhouse to a lonely lighthouse on the eastern seaboard, surrounded by fog, rocks, and decaying maritime wreckage, steeped in coastal decay rather than rural dread. The basic premise. A small group of survivors becomes trapped inside an old automated lighthouse after undead begin emerging from the sea and surrounding the rocky island. The lighthouse is partially functioning, partially ruined, with the top-level lamp intermittently working, creating sweeping circles of light that reveal dozens of corpses drifting in the water below. The movie is defined by claustrophobia, fog, tides, limited visibility, isolation, eerie nautical imagery. It's still Night of the Living Dead, but reframed as a beacon in the dark that can't save anyone. Key characters. 1. Mara, a resourceful, stoic young woman who washed ashore after a ferry accident, this version's emotional core. 2. Ellis, a guilt-ridden ex-Coast Guard radio operator, drinking himself numb after abandoning survivors earlier that night. 3. Franklin, a lighthouse keeper's assistant, timid, intelligent, but mentally fraying due to isolation. 4. The Keeper, the original lighthouse keeper, already dead before the film starts, but his corpse later plays a major role in the film's midpoint reveal. 5. drift zombies, weather-beaten, bloated, waterlogged undead who rise with the tide and retreat with it. The four most famous scenes from the Lighthouse version. Scene 1, The Ringing Bell. Opening. Instead of a graveyard, the film begins with a bell buoy clanging in rough waves, fog swallowing the horizon. Rotting hands cling to the buoy as the first undead emerges from the water. Scene 2, The Rotating Lamp Reveal. When the lighthouse lamp flickers on for the first time, it sweeps over the rocks, revealing dozens of bobbing bodies in the water, drifting closer every rotation. It's considered one of Romero's most chilling moments in that timeline branch. Scene 3, The Keeper's Body. The group discovers the lighthouse keeper has chained himself inside the lamp room and died intentionally to prevent the lamp from guiding boats into the undead-infested shoreline. His eyes open later. Scene 4, The Tide Scene. At high tide, the zombies climb the rocks in synchronized jerks, as if moved by the sea itself, a precursor to the coordinated zombies of Day of the Dead and Land of the Dead. The ending. Bleak, more bleak than the farmhouse cut. Mara is the last survivor, trapped in the collapsing lighthouse as the tide rises and undead climb the stairs. The final shot. The lighthouse light sputters out, plunging everything into darkness. A symbolic end to any last beacon of hope. In some alternate timelines, this experimental draft stayed and evolved into the final film. In our timeline, by contrast, the farmhouse script eventually won because it was cheaper and more visceral. But the Lighthouse version survived in a nearby strand. Alternate Timeline Variant 4, Night of the Living Dead. Ben's Stand Edition, Echo Timeline, Designation NOTLD 69 Ben. Alternate History. Ben survives during the farmhouse ending writing phase of the script. He escapes the farmhouse as it collapses and becomes a long-running protagonist in that world's Romero canon. This is the same one from the Dusk of the Dead, Twilight of the Dead, Romero Jones strand that we covered in a previous video. This world's Romeroverse is sprawling, operatic and mythic. After the cult success of Night of the Living Dead, instead of drifting apart, Romero and Dwayne Jones become creative partners. Jones co-writes and co-produces Romero's follow-up projects. Their collaboration evolves into an official Living Flame trilogy. Echo tagline. In the end, they rose from the night, together. Release info. Echo release date, March 15th, 1969. Runtime, 104 minutes. Overall. Summary. This alternate timeline variant of Night of the Living Dead preserves much of the original structure, but the ending diverges radically. Ben survives. Rather than being tragically shot by the cleanup crew, he emerges from the house at dawn, weary, bloodied, but alive. He takes command of a group of emerging survivors, helping them navigate the ruined world with hope instead of despair. In this echo cut, the film closes not in nihilism, but in emergent myth. Ben gives a speech about the importance of memory and resisting the cycles of old violence, setting the tone for what becomes a trilogy of rebuilding. Tone. This variant pulls in scenes from Romero's original script that were too graphic or too costly for the 1968 cut in our timeline. He got better funding here, and censorship was more lax in this thread. The Echo cut leans further into flesh horror, even while evolving toward hope. Echo Film 2, Dusk of the Dead, 1973. Release info, Echo release. Date, October 5th, 1973. Runtime, 118 minutes. Unmade in our timeline, fully realized in Echoes. Dwayne Jones co-stars and co-writes. The iconic line from our timeline's dawn is spoken by Ben in this version of the film. Overall summary. Picks up years after Night, in a world where pockets of human survivors try to rekindle society. Explores themes of spiritual resurrection, moral rebuilding, and fire-bearing leadership. Ben becomes a philosopher leader, not just surviving zombies, but helping others survive themselves. Years after the events of the first film, Dusk follows Ben as he helps lead one of the few post-collapse survivor enclaves, struggling not just to survive the undead, but to guide humanity away from repeating the sins of its past. Rather than being a siege film, it's about building sanctuary, forging temples of memory amid decay. Tone, elevated gore mixed with metaphor. This film stylizes its horror in fire and ash, but doesn't hold back on violence when necessary. Core theme: you must carry the fire through the dusk, or it goes out forever. Ben. Visuals: striking use of sunrise and flame imagery, temple-like gathering spaces for survivors. Echo Film 3, Twilight of the Dead, 1983. Release info: Echo release. Date: November 11th, 1983. Runtime: 124 minutes. Jones and Romero reunite for the culmination of their shared mythos. Final confrontation between undead entropy and the living memory flame. Overall summary: a decade later, Ben has become known as the Keeper of the Flame, an elder who preserves memory, culture, and identity in a world nearly consumed. The final film pits him against not just the undead, but entropy itself, the slow forgetting of humanity. This film is a hymn and a eulogy, closing the trilogy not in despair, but in bittersweet transmission of what was worth keeping. The climax involves the Sanctum of Memory, a crypt where each survivor must choose which human memory to preserve before they die. It is simultaneously a horror set piece and a spiritual initiation. Tone: bleak elegance. Romero and Jones push toward symbolic violence, but this entry includes some of the most grotesque death imagery in the trilogy, especially in the memory crypt and final stand. Core theme: even in the twilight, the light remains. Ben. Alternate timeline variant 5, Night of the Living Dead, Nightspawn, Harvest of the Stars. Echo timeline, designation, Note TLD, 68 UFO. Alternate history: from 1967 to 1968, when Romero got the budget together, he had two major concepts bouncing around in his mind: ghouls, aliens. So yes, there are timelines where Romero went the sci-fi route, and ironically, he still accidentally invented a new horror genre even in those worlds. In this variant, rather than emitting radiation, the crashed satellite contained alien spores housing a parasitic alien consciousness, invisible and infectious, that reanimates and puppeteers dead bodies and even living people. Changes: radiation is replaced by a parasitic alien consciousness. UFOs are directly shown. Aliens appear once, observing. Zombies are part of a larger cosmic phenomenon. Score is more Thermin-heavy. Ending features a crater site with glowing debris. This is the closest thing to Romero making a 1950s alien-zombie hybrid film. The aliens' reasoning for causing the outbreak is very similar to that in I Am a Hero, where the outbreak was used as a hostile planet takeover. Nightspawn, Harvest of the Stars. Infection mechanism: alien spores corrupt both the dead and living. Sometimes the body is dead, sometimes it's just psychically hijacked. Tone: more eerie, surreal, and existential dread instead of just survival horror. Ending: humanity realizes they are not fighting a plague, they are fighting the end of free will. Impact: spawned an alternate alien body horror genre years before films like The Thing in those worlds. Alternate timeline variant 6, Night of the Living Dead. The gender reversal draft. Echo timeline designation, No TLD 68 Gen. Alternate history, very rare, but written and produced in a few divergent timelines. Differences: Barbara is the stoic hero in this draft. Ben is more fearful and emotionally shaken, much like Barbara in our draft. Cooper is unchanged. Cooper's child is a son in this version. Ending: Barbara survives. Ben dies being pulled through the window, mirroring Barbara's death in our version. Alternate timeline variant 7, Night of the Living Dead. The radio-centric cut, Echo, timeline designation, no TLD 68 RAD. Alternate history. This variant still takes place at the farmhouse, but focuses heavily on news broadcasts, including extended radio interviews, scientists contradicting each other, panicked callers, attacks at the studio going down mid-broadcast. This version feels like an early found footage radio drama. Alternate timeline variant 8, Night of the Living Dead, The Abandoned Highway Draft, Echo timeline, designation, no TLD 68 ABN. Alternate history. Instead of setting the film in a farmhouse, the survivors barricade inside a deserted roadside diner along Route 30. This version has neon lights flickering, jukebox horror, zombies pushing against glass storefront windows, an extended highway attack scene. This is one of the most visually striking versions across timelines. Alternate timeline variant 9, no TLD 6810, The Temple Cut, Echo timeline, designation, no TLD 6810. Alternate history, the rarest variant. The farmhouse is replaced with an abandoned rural church, and themes of resurrection, desecration, sanctuary, loss of faith, all woven deeply into the script. Romero veered away from writing this draft in our timeline, fearing accusations of sacrilege. In closing, after reviewing the known branches of the Night of the Living Dead cluster, one thing becomes clear. The zombies were the constant. The location changes, the survivors change, the themes change, the endings change, yet somehow the nightmare remains. Across the Veil of Worlds, Romero kept returning to the same question. What happens when the dead rise, and the living reveal who they truly are? In some timelines, the darkness came from coal dust, in others from the sea, from alien stars, from abandoned highways, from broken faith, or from the camera itself. But every version points toward the same truth. The dead were never the real horror. The living were. And somewhere beyond the archive shelves, countless other nights still wait to be discovered. The Storybearer.